His popularity is as great, if not greater now than ever, and VIP caught up with him at a charity tennis match at the famous Queen's Club in London this week. But first, let's hear some of that marvellous voice. Cliff, I know one of your big passions in life is tennis, and we're here at the Queen's Club in London for a Pro-Am tournament. Do you enjoy playing in these events?
Well, I come and play here actually every year after Wimbledon is over. They have a charity pro-celebrity tournament, and it's really nice to participate in it. You know, so it's and it, you know, it's when you're doing charity work, some people think it's sacrificial, but it's not at all. I mean, it's quite a pleasure to be out on a lovely day like this and meet a lot of famous people and famous tennis players, and actually get to play with famous tennis players.
And they get to play with you, of course.
I'm not sure that's as much of a treat as it is for us.
I don't know about a tennis match, but do you ever get nervous before a concert, or did you get nervous before Heathcliff?
No, Heathcliff had no nerves involved in it at all. I didn't feel nervous one single night, not at all.
Why was that?
Well, I talked this over with some of the other cast members, and they think that maybe it's the first time I've ever played a character, so that I wasn't having to go out there and be Cliff Richard and hope they all like me. You know, I was hiding behind a facade, really, I suppose, and it kind of makes sense. I don't know how far you can analyse these things, but I didn't have nerves. And maybe it's because I was so goaded on by the media, who'd been so vicious to me for nearly 5 years. I actually thumbed my nose at a lot of them and said, well, I don't give a damn what they think. I don't give two hoots what they feel. I am doing this for me and for my fans, and we did it good.
There seems to have always been a big discrepancy between the way the press has treated you and your fans.
I think on the whole, fans, for instance, I mean, everybody who's got fans, they're a pretty loyal bunch. With the press, we just have to learn to deal with the fact that none of them can do what we do, and yet they still are there out there criticizing us. And it's a painful process for those of us who are vulnerably, you know, presenting whatever we feel is right artistically and creatively in front of thousands of people night after night.
Heathcliff was deemed to be a big risk for you, not least of all because you put £3 million of your own money into it.
It was a dangerous thing for me to do artistically, and this is why maybe I'm naive, maybe I expect more of people than they're prepared to give, but I thought the press might think it was strange for me to do this, and that is fine, because it is strange. It's against character, it's against everything that I believe and hold dear. I had to be somebody I wasn't, but then I kept saying to them, but it's called acting. I don't have to change my lifestyle. I bet you Anthony Hopkins has not taken to eating human flesh.
It's not as though you haven't acted before, because you've made several films and television shows. It wasn't new.
Plays. Yeah. So it wasn't a new venture. It was just dangerous because of all the aspects of financial aspects, and of course this was a major role that I was trying to play. And I hoped that the press might say, look, well, he may not be able to do a good luck, but they didn't do that to me. They actually were quite vitriolic. Most of them were. You
proved them all wrong. I think something like 80% of the tickets were sold before the show even went on tour. With a career that spanned 4 decades, have you ever been frustrated at the fact that people have tried to label you?
Well, again, I think coming back to Heathcliff, that's part of the problem as far as the press were concerned. I'm the goody two-shoes who sings Living Doll, but that's their concept, and probably that's something that they're trying to create about an artist like me. Most actors, most singers that I know have other things to offer. And why should we be compartmentalized? You know, we're not journalists. We're not people who strictly do one thing.
When you set out as the young Cliff Richard in 1958 with your first big hit was Move It, and you caused quite a stir in the press then with your hip jiving. In fact, I think it was described as obscene even then. What kind of career did you have in mind?
Well, I certainly didn't have this in mind, because I didn't know how long it would last. I mean, we all used to go around singing rock and roll is here to stay. But we didn't know it was here to stay. We just had our fingers crossed and hoped for the best. Okay, it turned out that rock and roll has become a genuine art form. As far as I'm concerned, the best art form there is. When I go and see musicals now, I go there knowing full well that the music I see may not be my favorite kind of music. It can be good music, because in all the various forms of music, there's either good or bad, or out of tune or in tune. But for me, my favorite kind of music is rock and roll, pop rock music. That, to me, is the best art form ever. And
staying true to that all your life, do you think that's been the key to your success?
I think it helps, but you have to remember that unlike, for instance, opera. Now, see, opera is a fantastic art form where you're almost an athlete to be able to do it. You have to train really hard, etc. The pop world isn't quite like that. But what the pop world has in its favor is that it's very wide. I don't have to sing a song in the key that it was written. If you're a soprano, you have to sing all the notes the same length, the same intonation. Everything has to be exactly the same. So we have a very free art form, the rock and roll world, and it means it's also very wide, so that you can dabble into gospel, black gospel music, soul music, a bit of country, a bit of, you know, blues. It's a wonderful art form, very, very wide, and so therefore people like myself try to do little bits of all of it, you know. I mean, you tend to specialize. I do. I specialize in a type of pop rock that I like. Feel-good music, although I still like to sing things like Devil Woman, which in fact in America was FM airplay only. So, you know, I'm quite happy with things like that.
Your biography is just one long list of records that you've broken or numbers that you've achieved. What are you most proud of?
Well, I think Heathcliff is the pinnacle of my career. I've never felt so comfortable, and I've never felt so satisfied.
You've had well over 100 hit records, and you spent over 1,000 weeks or something incredible in the charts. With all the records that you've broken, what are you most proud of, and what can come next?
Well, I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, the thing about, again, our industry is that just because you've done something, you don't have to continue in that direction. I mean, I don't want to stop doing concerts. I like doing concerts. So, I mean, I shall do some concerts very soon.
Back in the 60s, you became a Christian very publicly, and your fans were worried that they might lose you. Has it affected your personal life and your career, for that matter?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think anybody that I know that became a Christian, their lives were turned upside down to a great extent. I don't think becoming a Christian necessarily means you change your job, but it might mean that. For some people that I know it did. For me it didn't. Although there was a point when I thought I would be changing my job. I thought I would leave showbiz.
Because it went against the grain?
No, I thought it did. I thought that I couldn't be a man of means or famous and be a Christian. And I look back now and think how naive. You know, when you think of biblical stories like Solomon, he's probably he's much better known than any of us. And he was richer than any of us, even richer than Elton John. And that's saying something. So it's God's opinion of fame and money that really counts. And so as soon as I realized that I could actually be an active Christian within my world, I could do concerts to raise money for the third world, I could talk about my faith as I'm talking about it at this very minute, and all because I'm a pop rock singer. If I'd given it up in 1964 or something like that, I think it would have been 66 actually, I think it would have been a major mistake. I'd have made a big mistake. The only thing I have to be prepared for is that if I really get the vibes that God would have me out of the business, I have to be prepared to leave. That's the difficult one.
That'll be the challenge.
Of recognizing when it is time to leave, because you know that God's got something better for you.
Having remained a bachelor all these years, you've been very open about your sexuality. Have you got bored with the fact that the press can never write or say anything about you without referring to it?
I'm used to it. I'm bored about it, really. I'm a 56-year-old man. I mean, I've decided to do with my life what I want to do with it, and I don't really care what other people think, to be honest with you. And there's not enough time to sort of justify everything that you say and do. I mean, I've got my lifestyle. I like it. I've never, ever put marriage completely out of the picture, but I don't see it for me. I don't feel I'm going to be led to the altar.
The turning point that comes from God.
But you see, it could still happen, and I don't know that it won't, but I'm not concerned about it. Whereas when I was in my 20s, early 20s, I was concerned that I wasn't married. Because why? Because all my friends were married.
It's social pressures.
Peer pressures, that's right. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of people do because of the pressure, and then find they've made the most dreadful mistake. Now, I think if I got married now, I wouldn't make a mistake.
Sex and drugs and very often broken marriages have been associated with rock and roll. When you see other pop stars and their mistakes, are you quite glad or relieved that you've managed to avoid them?
It's a factor, I suppose. If you're going to analyse why people are still around after a long time, then that's got to be taken into account. But
through sheer dedication to your craft,
that would have helped me, yes, because I've been able to do whatever I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I didn't have another party involved or children where... because, you see, if I got married and had children, they would have to have a priority in my life. It would be only right that they should have priority. And that means you would cut back maybe on the work you do. And that's why, if I got married, it would be a major step, and it would be exactly the right thing to do, and I would make room for it. I wouldn't expect my wife to tag along behind me to concerts. I just do less concerts and tag along with her.
Obviously, you lead a very busy life, but are you ever lonely?
No, never.
Because you're surrounded by your fans and your friends?
Yeah, loneliness is a strange thing. I'm a gregarious person. I've got a lot of good friends and a career that just pounds along, and there's very little time to be lonely as such. But even on your own, you know, I like being on my own sometimes, and I don't get lonely then. If I go off on holiday and maybe spend a week by myself at my home in Portugal, I'm quite happy with my own company. I don't think I'd like it for too long, but I could cope with a week or two. where I don't have anybody with me, and if I was going to be lonely, I'd have felt it there, but I don't.
At 56, people are always drawing attention to the fact that you look so young. Do you think keeping fit has something to do with it?
Well, I suppose you can only do what you can to help yourself remain fit, but agelessness and aging is something that none of us have any control over. If I don't look my age, then it's just good fortune. It's in the genes. You know, you can slap on all the oils and creams that people can recommend, but in the end, all you can do is feed yourself well, try and remain fit by having some exercise, and even if you don't look young, you'll look good. I mean, I think that's the only way I can look at it, really.
Obviously, you've kept going for so long. There's a great buzz that you must get from being on stage. But apart from the tennis and other things, what do you think is the most important thing in your life?
Oh, my faith is the most important thing. That day, that night, in fact, when I lay on my bed and said, "Okay, Jesus, I give up. I'd like you in my life."
Had you been fighting it?
No, not fighting it, but if I'm honest, and I think most Christians would agree to this, that when you look into Christianity, you're usually looking into it to break it down. You're not trying to prove it right, you're trying to prove it wrong so that you can then go off and find something else. And I couldn't break it down. So I wasn't fighting it, but I wasn't actually trying to build it up. I just found that as I queried it and got my answers, I was overwhelmed by the truth of it all.
Is there anything still remotely missing from your life? Anything you'd particularly like to achieve?
One hit record every month would be good. That's missing out of my life. It's missing out of most people's lives.
It still means as much as it did when you... I mean, you still have the hit records, yeah?
Yeah, you kind of... it's very hard to have hit records now because people, the radio stations, for instance, don't play people like me. And it means that the new guys have got no real competition as far as I'm concerned. I reckon I can make records as good as anybody else. But if they're not being played alongside all the Oasis and Blur, how are we to ever know who's really winning the race? It's a two-horse race.
What about the Spice Girls? Do you think that that's just a phenomenon of the moment?
It's a great phenomenon, yeah, and it's good for women. But only time will tell whether they'll be around in 10 or 15 years' time.
Let alone 40.
Let alone 40.
Cliff Richard, thank you very much for joining us on VIP.
Thanks a lot.
The extraordinary thing about Cliff Richard is how he's kept that contemporary feel, always, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I think he's been very conscious of the changing trends in music, and over the 4 decades that his career spans, he's always tried to sort of keep up with the times, and he's had hits in every single decade.
And he looks incredibly fit, too.
So fit. I think it's one of those things on the tennis court, you know, you see him prancing around, you think he'd be 25 years old. What's your favourite Cliff Richard song?
We're all going on a summer holiday from years ago, I know, but I just love the double-decker bus. I can't get away from it.
And Devil Woman?
Yes, Devil Woman, obviously, because that was written about me, obviously.
And mine is We Don't Talk Anymore.
We Don't Talk Anymore.